Well, it's been a little while since I felt the need to bust this out. If you've been around here for a little bit, you know that one of the things that will get my hackles up pretty harshly is so-called generative AI. I've talked about it before, particularly the fact that it is clearly, definitively, and undeniably built on, powered by, and run on theft. When last I talked about this in detail, I talked about how they were stealing transcripts from YouTubers to feed their generative AI large language models. Something that they basically admit to doing and have tried to argue that they can't train without stealing copyrighted material and using it without permission. But we're not talking about that today. Today we're focusing a bit more on the output of these things. Because I saw and have not seen nearly as much backlash or note about this as there should have been, a TED Talk. A TED Talk by an individual named Rob Brdeaux. Now, Rob is himself a special effects artist. Well, he was. At this point, he is a VP at ILM, Industrial Light and Magic, one of the most well-renowned and beloved visual effects houses in the world, and has been since its creation by George Lucas, specifically designed to help him enable the Star Wars movies. So this TED Talk, he tries to build a case for integrating AI into their processes, and he does it pretty badly. Now, look, I'm not going to make fun of his presentation. The guy's not a public speaker. He's a special effects VP. That's fine. That's his job. He's not new to this business. He's been doing it since the 90s to one degree or another. But he starts out, laying out all these things, the way that artists and technology kind of came together. And he's not wrong. But he tries to paint a picture trying to equate artists and engineers being brought together to help create the effects for the original Star Wars trilogy, to then try and draw a line from that to the CGI taking over for stop motion animation with Jurassic Park, and the fact that Phil Tippett, who was a stop motion specialist, is in fact still working today, despite having made the prediction that he was going to go extinct. Bringing up things like the volume, which is this technique that was developed, well, not developed specifically for The Mandalorian, but put to full-scale use with The Mandalorian. And all of these are valid things. It is a way of technology having advanced, but here's the thing. Each of the examples he cites exists to solve a specific problem that a specific story had. Star Wars needed a whole new approach to effects to accomplish what it wanted to do. Jurassic Park was going to use stop-motion animation, but something smoother and more realistic was developed. The volume fixed the problem of using green screen, which would have been reflecting off of the armor that the Mandalorian character wears. Even the use of AI for the flashbacks and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny existed to solve the specific issue of Harrison Ford not being that young anymore. They were specific solutions to specific problems. Purely generative AI is not a solution for anything. There isn't a hole that needs to be filled. There isn't a problem that needs fixing. And then there's the other thing. Every one of his earlier examples required and paid dozens of artists. Dozens, if not hundreds of people had to design, create, build, whether it be physically or in a computer, these visual effects. And then he tries to say how AI is the next step.
So what happens when you put the latest AI tools in the hands of talented artists?
And he gives the game away almost immediately, because he gives a presentation that he says was created, and I'm going to put that in the biggest sarcasm quotes ever, created by a single artist.
This was created by one artist. His name is Landis Fields. He created this in 2 weeks.
He credits Landis Fields, who has been working in the effects world steadily since about 2002. he has already failed to address one of the major concerns of AI use in Hollywood, which is that it's going to cost people a lot of jobs. And he tries to brush that off early on in the talk, but then doesn't really bring up AI use until the back end, because if he had made that point earlier, like it's not going to steal everybody's job, and he'd then try and reiterate the fact, Phil Tippett's still working. Yes, he is, because you still need him. He's part of a team. You don't use him for stop motion animation one-to-one anymore, but his stop motion knowledge and techniques are used and integrated into other things. But then you present a bunch of AI generated footage you claim was made by one artist. This is fully rendered visuals that would normally take a team weeks or months to make, and you credit it to one person. And you have the nerve, the absolute gobsmacking, gallstone gargling nerve. I don't even know what that was. That's how angry I am at this. To say that it's not going to cost people jobs.
And as someone who's been a visual effects artist for over 35 years, some of these headlines are pretty disappointing. They seem to say AI is coming, and it's coming for our jobs.
And holy crap, do you know what I just realized while I was editing this? He never actually says we won't lose jobs to AI. He implies it as heavily as he can through that dismissive tone, and through citing people like Phil Tippett still working in the industry even though stop motion isn't a thing anymore. But he never says AI won't actually cost jobs. In my memory, he'd actually said it, but he didn't. He just expresses the notion dismissively and moves on. But I'm kind of slowly building up to the actual cherry on this. The actual results, the actual output, which he so harshly stresses, like, this is not finished product.
So I'm going to premiere for you a brand new short film. This is just a test. This is not a final product.
Yeah, I certainly hope not. Because what he presents is, what he says is sort of like, almost sort of test footage. Like, if we were to make a show that was like a nature documentary of a Star Wars planet, like if we just dropped a probe droid on a random world in Star Wars and had it look around and roam around and take footage of the wild animals on this new planet, it might look something like this. And then he proceeds to show it. Now, before I show you any of this, let's pause for a moment and think about the creature and animal design in Star Wars. It is top notch. There's a few things that have very clear design inspirations, whether it be the Ewoks or whether it be the Gamorreans with their clear pig snout. But by and large, there's some insanely inventive creatures in Star Wars. You have the Hammerhead aliens. You have the Hutts. You have the Rancor. The Gungans, the creatures that were supposed to execute our heroes in Attack of the Clones. Even the idea of this giant brontosaurus neck looking thing that lives on an asteroid, that's bonkers. You may like some of it more than you like others, but there's clear imagination, human imagination on display. I'm going to underline that idea of human imagination. And now, let's take a look at what Rob thought was worth showing off. Yep. Drink it in. The most basic, bare bones, take two animals and smash them together nonsense because AI has no creativity. A human had to come up with a Wampa or a Wookiee. AI, all it can do is just take established things that already exist and mash them together. You can claim that's the same thing as humans do when they take inspiration from various things in nature, but you know what? None of the creatures in Star Wars looked like a peacock smashed with a snail, or a tiger polar bear, or a blue lion, or a spider with a monkey face. And let's not forget the iconic turtle crocodile. This is not creativity. This is nonsense. And I would be willing to bet that if they tried to get something more original looking, like the actual creatures you get in Star Wars, creativity that gave us everything from Admiral Akbar to Yoda, AI can't do it. It just can't. And as much as AI evangelists will try and argue, oh, but it's no different from how human beings take inspiration from a handful of things and just put it together in a new shape. That's the same thing AI does, but AI has no creativity. You tell AI to mash together aspects of two animals, it's just going to literally do that. Human creativity can take aspects of animals and apply them and put them together, but it's also going to streamline them and come up with its own ideas. That's what the human mind does with inspiration. It leaps off from it and does something else. AI can't. And if they tried, they probably would have looked like garbage. I bet you it actually looked better when they said just straight up, put octopus tentacles on a manatee's face. And don't get me wrong, the fidelity of these videos is impressive. It's not worth the cost we pay for it, but hang on to that. I'll come back to it. But it does look pretty impressive. It's why I said that this is the work of one person that would have taken weeks or months with a traditional team of visual effects artists, because it does look good from a strictly technical point of view. The creativity is completely absent. It's literally just taking two things and smashing them together and pretending it's a new thing when it's not. You can see the exact two things that were taken as inspiration in each and every single one of these things. This is soulless. This is devoid of any amount of actual imagination, and you can tell that there's no meaningful human input beyond the prompt. Now, Rob tries to cover for this. He does say, tools can't just be a matter of, a text prompt. That's not going to work. Okay, what the hell was this? Because he doesn't actually let us in on what the process of generating these videos were. He credits it to an artist, but he doesn't explain what that means. And he won't, because he'd have to admit that an artist did basically nothing. And if they did accept these as final results, that is dozens of jobs, dozens of people they don't need to pay anymore, because they can pay one person to prompt an AI generator. But the only thing I'll give this guy any credit for is he does at the very least put a stress point on the fact that it has to have the cooperation of the people whose likenesses are involved, because he brings up Harrison Ford and Dial of Destiny.
And as these tools do get so powerful, we do need to use them thoughtfully with the full permission of the talent, where Harrison Ford gave his permission for his likeness to be used, and we had full access and the rights to the training data.
Although, that having been said, I say that's a minuscule amount of credit, because I would bet you almost anything that the only reason he stresses that is because he has to, for political reasons. And I don't mean political as in national politics. I mean like the actors union. This was gross. And the fact that he thought that these images, these videos were worth showing off, were worth getting excited about. And yeah, he says oh, well, this wouldn't be finished product. What would be then? What meaningful finished product would you ever get out of these things? Don't bother answering, because I'm still going to reject it. Because, reminder, my issues with generative AI are not only the fact that it is built on theft, or the fact that it is artistically bereft. There's also the undeniable fact that it is accelerating the destruction of our environment. AI server farms go through a preposterous amount of fresh water. Water that these companies have to hoard at a time when water shortages globally are becoming a bigger and bigger issue, a problem that is only going to accelerate in the years that come as the goddamn planet heats up, and they are throwing fresh water at server farms to cool these things so that somebody can create a fucking bird with the face of a lemur. This is part of what's so infuriating about AI. It is helping boil the goddamn planet. And for what? For this? You think this is worth it? You think this is worth the cost of dozens, hundreds, thousands of people's livelihood? Built on training data, comprised of stuff that they do not have the rights to and did not compensate the original creators for, all while it helps worsen and hasten the environmental destruction of the entire goddamn planet. You think this is worth all that? I honestly have a hard time thinking of anything more nihilistic than feeling that this nonsense is worth all of that. Because that is what is happening. That is what is currently happening, will happen, and is what people like Rob want to help facilitate happening. I'm picking on him because he's the one who presented this stuff. He is a senior VP, and so I am inclined to think that if he's handling this, he's probably on board with it. It is possible that maybe he's being instructed to push this as hard as he is. Doesn't really matter whose fault this is. Whether it's him or somebody above him or a board of directors or Kathleen Kennedy or the frickin' shareholders, it doesn't matter. Whoever thinks this is a good idea has such a warped view of what art is, of what the future should be, that I don't think I even want to know who that is. You know, I've given AI some credit in the past that I said it was slightly more valid than NFTs because at least it results in something in a final product, whereas NFTs were literally nothing. I'm not sure if I even feel like being that generous anymore. And it feels kind of fitting that one of the first images shown in this freaking montage is a goddamn ape. Oh, but it has stripes. How original. Seeing stuff like this presented like it is a good or impressive or promising thing is just gross. It's hollow. It's soulless. And it's deeply uninventive. That is what we would have for creatures in Star Wars if AI was creating them. And to prove my point about this looking soulless, let me direct you to a creator I know from TikTok called Meg's Mashables. Her entire deal is just taking two things and combining them.
I have to make a snurtle now.
But she does it with a unique artistic style that is hers and hers alone, and she clearly has an entire artistic process she goes through every time she makes one.
Snurtle.
This is what an actual artist sticking two things together looks like. Not this. You need to realize a massive part of why a big focus with AI right now is making things as realistic as possible, because they cannot do artistic without deliberately aping somebody else's style. They can't add style. They can't add personal flair. They're machines. And they could never make a mashup so cute that it became a plushie. Not without outright stealing it. AI needs to burn. And I will keep saying it. I actually say it more often than you even realize, because I semi-regularly have volunteered for and been roped into tests of proposed, upcoming, or early AI features here on YouTube. And I can't go into exceptionally heavy detail because I do have to sign some stuff regarding that, but I will happily tell you that they all suck. They're all bad. And knowing what it costs in environmental damage, the fact that this stuff exists at all, yeah, makes it worse. Makes it so much fucking worse. This stuff is indefensible. It's not good. And it's creating so much bad. I'm not going to say that every single conceivable aspect of AI or even large language models is unsalvageable. But generative AI, your image generators, your video generators, and your freaking chat bots, all of that needs to go in the damn bin. And it needs to go in the bin yesterday. Because being here today, it has caused so much damage. Just so we can have a rhino zebra. I know this one isn't a particularly in-depth analysis. I kind of honestly needed a little bit of an easier topic because I'm behind on other stuff and too much has been going on this month. But seriously, I am actually this ticked off. While I'm kind of taking the topic as a little bit of a gimme this week, the anger is not played up. It is genuine. Every time I see a supposed artist actually big up this stuff, part of me dies inside and I feel like I'm going to choke on my own bile. It is so disheartening that anyone who even ostensibly has ever been an artist would ever back this stuff. It's skin crawling. And it just looks like garbage. Not because the image fidelity isn't good, but because there's no creativity to this at all. Because it's not actually intelligent. It doesn't have a mind. It doesn't have thoughts. It's not creative. It's a piece of junk that's burning the planet. Get rid of it. So there you go. ILM paving the way for our AI-generated future. Yeah. We're already living through an age where people are pointing out that effects look better from movies 20 years ago than they do from movies 2 years ago. And now you're going to bring AI to the party? Yeah, that'll solve your frickin' problems. What are your thoughts about this? Whatever they might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's bitch about it. Patreon pays the bills, enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out. I'm tired. Like I said, there's been too much going on this month. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. You know the YouTube things. You're not here for the first time. Just don't worry too much about it. What I want you to remember is that because you are a person, you are not an algorithm, you are beautiful, you are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. And now it's time to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Quite Bearish, Zubin Lutfula, Auntie Kate 808, Mira G, Angry Casper, Dave Hall, Andre, Movie Turtle, Oliver B, Welsh Wrestling Geeks, Melissa Pedersen, Mary Mello, Iron, Becky Sparks, Loki Eris, Tracy Scrabbit, and Sir Didymus is my favorite. We have a new little guy here under my hair. That's Satyr. So yes, he can now join in the distraction chorus as I try to read names. Thanks, guys. Welcome to the family.